Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Sumit.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So yeah. So maybe I guess in last session we went ahead with a few of the things which helped us understand maybe multiple aspects of RAP managed scenarios, right? So let's just go through a bit of a recap of what we did in the earlier session. Then we'll proceed with the agenda of what we are going to learn in today's session. Okay. So when we started our journey, what we understood is that when it comes to RAP, it's some sort of a RESTful ABAP programming model. And what we were also thinking is if someone says REST API, it means we might be having our create, update, delete, and maybe I guess read and query those kind of standard operations which it would be working with. We might had let's just say a mindset saying when we work with a rep scenarios, or I can say when we work with any REST API service, we'll be responsible for that. But unlike when we started with a managed rep scenario, what we understood is that there are plenty of things which RAP as a framework takes care when you are going with a managed RAP scenario, right? So what we understood is in the managed implementation, we have this particular operations and everything enabled. We enabled static field control. We got the draft capabilities without doing much. We just added the action and the tables, and the thing also started working in the terms of draft and everything, right? Post which we realized that it's not always enough for us to have those operations if I openly enable my system to accept any kind of a data. Rather, I'll need some sort of a gatekeeper, which ultimately ensures that the data which is being, let's just say, uh, entered into my DB or in my system is a valid one. So, as a part of which we understood some sort of a validation. Okay. So what validation does is validation tries to help you with the any sort of a data validation. Now, be it let's just say validating whether certain mandatory fields are being entered, or maybe certain validation which validates whether certain data is valid contextually. So maybe I guess the example we were thinking of is if I have a material which may be let's just say a valid material number, but when I'm entering it in the context of some sort of a plant, whether that particular material is available in that particular plant or not, that defines the validity of the data. So any sort of such contextual or field level validation, if we are supposed to do, then we can go with a validation. So that's where we implemented validation, and we understood a term and the keyword over here, validation. We understood that whenever we are defining something called validation, we can give it any short of a name, a free text, which ultimately helps us understanding it going forward. Rather than giving a ABC name, we can give it some meaningful name. We can say that on click of save, this should get triggered, and on what all operation on particular like just a life cycle of my application saying create, update, delete, or in case certain individual field is being altered like we have over here, right? So those are the possible uh, let's just say events on which you can decide whether you would like to have a validation triggered or not. Okay, post which we implemented that, so we are going to go through its implementation part in a minute. Other than that, we also understood something called determination. So for example, if someone is loading my application, I would like to default certain value. For example, start date of my journey to today's date. If someone is entering value of X field, I would like to determine the value of Y field, right? So that particular X field might be something which I can expect my application to be dependent on. Okay, then it's also called as a determination because it helps me determine the value of one field or set of field on the other set of fields or other set of events. Okay, so if I just go into the implementation part of it, here I'll go in my R class over here. For each of the determinations and the validation, you will see a method um, in place. So if I just go into the handler class over here in my LHC handler, here you would see that it has validate mandatory fields. If I go over here, you see what I'm getting into the input is the key parameter. As we are getting the key parameter, we have to derive the whole set of a data. That's where we have to get it via the EML, entity manipulation language. We'll always say read the data by specifying the root entity into the local mode because we are in the context of that BO and we'll read the data of that particular entity for which we would like to have the data. We can specify either all fields like we used to specify select star into a SQL, or you can specify fields and into the brackets specified field like we used to specify select A comma B comma C individual fields. And by passing the input parameter and it will give us the data. Okay, now after doing that, we can also plan to validate the data, and that's where we understood transient and state messages. So when I say transient messages, it means these are the messages which may not be persisted, but will kick in when you click on a save, and um, the highlighting of it won't be done onto a particular field. Rather, if I say state messages, it will decide the state of a particular data field, saying whether this particular field is having a, or I can say carrying a valid data or not. Till the time you don't mark that field going forward as a valid one. So for that, in the initial of this particular state messages, always we clear out the state. We specify the key parameter into my failed one and the actual message that we are supposed to show into my reported parameter. Here we are supposed to pass the full key parameter so my screen can actually map the right field if it has got the right path. So I'll provide the path of the travel, or I can say main entity onto which it has been defined by using the total key parameter plus the element saying, for example, begin date has got some invalid data. So I'll mark that element so my system knows what exactly is wrong into the data that is being entered. And maybe the actual thing, which is the message, which gives some contextual idea to my end user what is wrong. Same goes with the all the fields. Now it can be some contextual data, whether my begin date is after, if it's after my end date, I should throw an error as well. Likewise, right? Now the same sort of a validation I can also add on my booking node as well. That's what we also understood, right? Now in order to set some sort of a determination. Now here we would like to determine some value. For example, on enter of a agency ID, I would like to auto populate my customer ID. Then you can read the data and you can update the things into buffer. How you can update the things into buffer or so-called tables, which are going to be visible to my end user by using so-called modify entities. Okay. You'll go with a modify entities, update certain field. Okay. And afterward, once it has been updated, uh, the next time when someone tries to trigger a get call to get the data, you might expect the user to see those updated data. And that follow on get call is something we also understood as a side effect. So purpose of side effect is to re-trigger the get call. Okay, sorry, maybe I have to put all of us on a mute mode. So purpose of side effect is to trigger a follow-on get call to get the updated data. For example, on change of agency ID, I would like to get some customer ID. That's the reason we are putting some side effect. Now, in order for us to use that, we have to use certain things. So, for example, on my behavior projection, I have to use a keyword called use side effect. Whereas if you see on my behavior, I have not added anything for my validation and my determination because on projection layer, they are not supposed to be exposed, rather they are auto exposed. Okay, so that's what we understood till now in my managed scenario. And maybe the last but not the least thing is a late numbering. Saying rather than early numbering, what would happen if I go with late numbering? It will give you an opportunity to generate the number towards the end, to very much end, so that during the save only number will be determined. But till that time, what will be the right companion for my user to uniquely identify a record? Some sort of a draft GUID. So the moment you add the late numbering, a draft GUID will be automatically added in my draft table. You are not supposed to do that. That would be done automatically. You might get a prompt and you might auto adjust the table. And in order for us to generate that particular number towards the save, rather than using early numbering method, what you will do is you will go in your save sequence and you will see a method called adjust number. These might get implemented. And in this implementation, what you are supposed to do is you have to ensure that if you are getting any record in your map travel, get a new travel ID And wherever travel ID is empty, just try to add that particular travel ID over here. Okay, and that's what we call it as a late numbering, because there is a save sequence after all the buffers, after everything has been finalized. The moment your record is ready to get saved on your database, adjust number is going to get triggered. Before that, this particular method, even though it gets triggered, this particular mapping won't have any data. Okay, only during the final save it will have something. Okay, so that's all that's what we understood in the last session. Anyone has any doubt on any of the things we covered so far? Okay, I'll take it as a no. Now, okay, let's just try to understand the next flavor. Okay, maybe I guess we have few things which we'll be learning in terms of a wrap, a generic wrap, which is also applicable for managed and unmanaged. But after spending so much time into managed, let's just also try to understand what all things unmanaged also have. Okay, so we understood that my wrap can have a managed and my wrap can have a unmanaged scenario. When we said managed scenario, we mention, or I can say when we specified a scenario, managed or unmanaged, we specifically answered one question, who, right? Saying who is going to be responsible, who is going to be responsible for handling the generic REST API calls, as in the create, update, delete, read, and query. Who is going to who is going to be responsible for this operations? That's what we mentioned. And if this answer of this who is standard implementation, or I can say standard framework, then we can call it as a managed scenario. Whereas if as a developer, we are supposed to implement this particular operations, then we can call it as an unmanaged scenario. Okay. Now, one thing it ultimately clearly tells us that whenever we are going with a managed scenario or unmanaged scenario, we might have to go with set of steps, right? First thing we ideally define is a data model. In the data model, what we used to do is we used to define some sort of I view, R view, and C view, right? Post which on my R view and C view, I used to define some sort of a behavior. I can say one shot of a behavior definition over here and one shot of a behavior projection over here. Post which I can say we used to have some sort of a services. This is called service layer, right? On the service layer, we can have some sort of a definition again and binding. So in terms of manage, we understood this. In terms of unmanaged as well, the layering is going to be the same. So the thing which is going to be common in both the cases is layering. Okay. Now, when we are talking about layering, let's also understand this. In case of a managed, right? This might be bit common. If I just look at the data model saying what is my source, where I can get the data from, what how much of it I might would like to project in my output, those things might also be common. Where did we introduce the keyword over here, manage? On my behavior level. So if I just go in my behavior right now, which is nothing but this one, right? As you can see, the name of it is ZJFR travel. Now, why is that the case? I mean, we could have renamed it, right? Why we did specify the name ZJFR travel? Because it's matching over here with my R view as well. So tomorrow, let's just say I might be interested in defining an unmanaged scenario, because here it says managed. So if I would like to generate an unmanaged service out of all the things that I do have, I might not be able to reuse this view. So why did we named it as a ZJFR travel? We could have named it as a R travel underscore manage or underscore unmanaged. Let me just say I'll right click on this and I'll try to create I'll try to create a new behavior definition. Okay, and what we see over here is that the name of your behavior is something which is fixed. It's matching exactly with your root entity. You cannot change it. Okay, now what idea does it give us? It gives us an idea that when you are also going with an unmanaged, the name of your behavior definition is going to be the same as your R view always. Okay, and same goes with your projection. That's going to be the similar with your C view. Exactly same, right? Now, if that's going to be the case, if I have a scenario, okay, let's just say I have a scenario where I'm developing a RAP application starting from the scratch as an unmanaged. I might plan to define my data model. I might plan to define my behavior and services all from scratch, and maybe things will go in a fine way, no issues. Post which, let's just say another scenario could be that I have defined and generated a managed application like I do have right now. Okay. And now I might also think that, hey, rather than a managed scenario, or I can say on top of a managed scenario, let's also have one more, let's just say capability exposed. So my single service work on a managed and unmanaged both. So in that case, if I try changing my behavior to unmanaged, my whole implementation till now will change, right? So from this particular data model perspective, what all things I'll be able to reuse? I view, right? This is something I'll be able to reuse. But my R view and C view, will I be able to reuse this? Right? We won't be able to reuse that. I'll just say not non-reusable. These are non-reusable from a technical architecture perspective, because now this time if I define any R view and C view over here, the behavior definition and projection, those are going to get generated, will be exactly with the name of this particular view, which is quite unique. And that's the reason I might have to generate everything other than this one I view. Okay, that's something we'll define in the terms of when we just start creating an unmanaged scenario. That's one. Second, as we are saying everything is something which will be my developer's responsibility, then why would anyone go with unmanaged scenario? Managed scenario gives me everything out of the box, right? Why would someone say, hey, I would like to choose an unmanaged scenario because it's fun? Not really, right? So, like I mentioned, managed scenario gives you things which are working out of the box, things which are working automatically. But at the same point in time, it gives you restrictions, saying in case of a create, I would like to perform something extra rather than just mapping 5 fields. I would like to also do certain more things in terms of a create. Then in that case, I might not have much places where I can write my code, right? Rather, I might have to depend on what framework hooks are given. I cannot do anything else more than those particular points. Rather, in unmanaged, you can utilize your own logic. Okay. So where I would need to utilize my own logic while my CRUD is being performed, I'll go with unmanaged. I can say when would be that required? In case I do have some sort of a built-in API classes or some sort of a BAPI or something, right? Which is already available, which says that, okay, if you would like to create an order, I'll just simply say, just go with a CL utility, for example, saying create. And the moment you create, it will create an order for you. Now, what is there inside the create? I may not need to worry. Or maybe there could be the case that this was defined by SAP earlier, or I can say by there are certain standard APIs which we are using. For example, some sales order creation, purchase order creation, or XYZ business object creations. Or it's there are pretty good chances that there exists certain application into your gateway or in your other let's just say normal reports as well, where you have defined some logic and you have already wrote all the business logic and they are in the terms of some sort of a utility classes. Now you would like to get the same functionality up and running in the terms of a RAP service, so that can be consumed by your Fury side, right? So it means I have some business logic already ready, and I do not want to rewrite that logic saying if there is the input, what should happen, if there is the how my user is doing, what should happen and everything. Rather, those things are already available. I would like to utilize them. Then it means I have a business logic available, then I'll go with an unmanaged. Okay. So here, developer's responsibility will be to handle the standard REST API. Now, whose responsibility it will be for the business logic handling? Definitely everywhere it would be developer's responsibility, but here we can expect that if you are going with unmanaged, it means you would have some predefined, pre-written business logic that you might be reusing. Or I can say you might plan to plug existing business logic, existing business logic. Okay. Now, does it mean that create, update, delete, read, and query, nothing will work? Not really. Your create, update, delete won't work. Your read and query will work to some extent. Okay. I'll just say in terms of an unmanaged scenario, need to implement it fully. In terms of read and query, few things will work. We'll see what. Okay. Another thing is this is something we are talking about a non-draft application. How about the draft capability? Because my draft as well has the same capability, right? In my draft, I would like to create a record. The moment I create a record, my draft table should also have that record created. The moment I change a field, my draft table has that particular field that should also get updated, right? So we already learned the draft mechanism. So in terms of managed, this used to work automatically. In terms of unmanaged, draft capabilities are also supported more or less similar out of the box. There are few things which you might have to adjust a bit, but draft framework is plugged automatically in your unmanaged. So mostly I can say to very good extent, like you are doing in the real scenario, you might not need to um, play much role in your draft capabilities implementation, rather follow the same step as we do have. We'll see what. Okay. So these are the similarities and differences you will see, and you will also understand that what are the things which we might have to redesign. Now here also it gives you an idea why we went ahead with the I view, interface view, rather than directly jumping onto my R view. Because if I would have directly written a select query on my table, I might also end up doing the same thing on my unmanaged as well. I may not have something that I can reuse, which I do have right now, called my interface view. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll generate a business object which is in the form of my unmanaged scenario, and we'll try to utilize it. Okay, that's what we are going to do now. I'll just go over here and we'll see that I have my I view over here. I would be interested in generating my own set of views this time. Okay, so this time R view and the I view. Okay, so now let's just say I have a R view and I view which I'm interested in creating. Maybe I'll just simply right click on this. Okay, and I'll just simply say new data definition. Okay, and maybe we had said JFR travel. Let's just call it this time as underscore U. Okay, I'll just say R view for my travel and unmanaged. Okay, I'll just say right next over here. Okay, we are going to use this transport. And again, the BO definition, the business object definition is going to play a key role over here. So we have to define whether that's a root entity or what's the role of it. So we know travel is going to be my root. So I'll just always go with this root one in case I'm defining a root node. Okay. And here we'll specify the business object, the data source for that. So set JF I travel. Okay. And maybe we'll comment this out for a while, this one as well, and we'll enter all the data. So BO definition will be similar. There won't be anything which you will see changing over here. Okay. I'll just simply activate this, and same goes with the booking as well. So let me just right click over here in new definition, and we'll simply say booking this time, and we'll define unmanaged. So I'll just say R view for my booking, but this time it's an unmanaged one. But it's not a root view, it's a normal view. So I'll just simply say define view entity. Okay, maybe it's just single table. There can be large amount of record, and it's a kind of a transactional data. Okay, and maybe here we'll simply say ZJF R book, my bad, ZJF I booking, right? And we'll define this over here. I hope you have consumed the right view here. Yeah, it's I view only. Perfect. Okay, and we might need the currency quantity relationship from here. So I'll just say ignore propagated annotation to false. Okay, so these are the things we have anyway learned earlier as well. Now we have to define the BO relation over here. That's something we have also done in past. So I'll say I would like to go with my R view over here and R view over here, and I would like to combine them. So I'll just copy this from here, and I'll just simply say that my travel is composed of n number of booking. So I'll just simply say 0 to star, okay, of my target data source, which is nothing but this one, and I might say it as a booking, and I might have to expose this. Plus this one is a parent for my booking node. So I'll also define association to parent. This one as maybe I'll just simply call it as a travel, and maybe we'll say on dollar projection where my travel ID is matching, right? And I'll expose this one as well. Now I might choose to either activate both of them together, or at least I have to activate child node first, because if you see your child node will have a warning, whereas your parent node will have an error. Okay, because the composition cannot be given directly rather than if the association to parent is not there. So now I can expect that this error should also be gone, and I'll activate this. Okay, same. Now what I'll do is I'll define a consumption views, or I can say projection views for this. So what I'll do is I'll just simply go here, and I'll just simply define setjf, this time C underscore U. Let's just say I'll just simply say consumption view for my travel, and maybe I'll just say unmanaged. And there's also a route view. Okay, now here what we have understood is that we'll go over here, copy the name of my travel over here, and I'll simply remove all these things that we do have, and maybe remove this one as well. Here we won't specify select from, rather we'll specify projection. I can say as projection on. We'll specify the view name, okay, and we'll get all the data. And as we are going to provide the transactional capability, I'll just simply say provide a contract transactional query. Okay, I'll just simply say format, and we have got an association over here. So we'll do the redirection on that the moment I have my other view also available. So I'll just simply say right click over here, and maybe we'll just simply go with a ZJF C booking consumption view for my booking unmanaged. Okay, let's just go next. Next over here, and we'll define a view entity. Okay, same goes over here. It's just one set of a table for us for now, and maybe we'll just transactional. And The data source for this is going to be my booking view, but it won't be a select from, rather it would be a projection on. And here also false. Okay, and now we'll say that, okay, this travel is a parent. So we'll simply go over here, copy this, and I'll simply say that redirected to parent. Now you might feel, okay, why would I even need this projection over here? I could have written a selection, right? Because what difference will it make? Okay, let's just see one more thing over here for our understanding perspective. Okay, I'll just simply say, rather than projection on, I might say select from. Okay, now one requirement of my projection view is that there should be a redirection. Just specify select from and try specifying redirected. You won't get anything, because only in your projection view you can have redirection. And this redirection is quite important in order for your internal transactional calls to get navigated from one to another. Okay, that's the reason the projection on is required. Many a time we'll feel why we call this view as a projection view, because it has a projection. Okay, so these are the things which are small thing, but quite linked to each other. Okay, and mandatory as well. So I'll just say redirected to parent. I'll just activate this, copy this, and maybe here I'll also add the composition to it. Redirected to composition child, this one. So what have we got over here is, we had our I view, we created our R view and C view. Now we'll create my behavior definition and projection. So the main magic that we are going to see over here is in the definition anyway, right? So I'll just simply go over here and this my okay. Let me just close all the left hand side blocks of that. Okay. So I have got this particular R view over here, which is this one. I have to create a behavior. So I'll just say right click and new behavior definition. Now it just generated a same template over here, but this time rather than choosing manage, I'll go with unmanage. Okay, so here I see ZJF R travel value simply available over here. I'll just go next. Okay, and here I'll just simply say finish. Now we'll see the magic. So we have got the code. Okay, and mostly the things might look similar without much differences. So for example, I'll just simply say this one. Okay, and now if I just simply try to compare it. So you see this is a unmanaged implementation. There is a managed one. The template that was generated at the time when we generated a manage, what are the similarities and differences? So here, rather than manage, it says unmanaged. Draft was anyway not available by default. We added it by our own. Okay. Alias was also something which was not there. Behavior blocks were there for the root and the composition. The things are quite similar. One main difference you will see is that earlier there used to be this persistent table specified. Here you won't have a persistent table because you are saying it's unmanaged. You are saying that the table over here into which my data record are going to get pushed, that's something which I'll take care of. Okay, so that's the reason you won't have a persistent table specified over here. Yeah, when you go with a draft mechanism, you might have a draft table, but not persistence for sure. Then you might have some numbering concepts and everything, whatever we define at our own, we can have those things. But from initial differences, I can say the unmanaged and the persistent table, these are the two main differences that you will observe in this particular case. Okay, so I'll just simply go over here back, okay, what to whatever I had earlier, and now I'll just simply um, try to get rid of this error and see how my service will look alike into action. Okay, let me just keep this thing similar, whether it's S or we'll just call it as a travel and booking, right, without an S. Fine. Okay. Now post which definitely we also have some sort of same constraint over here that this field should be um, having a static field control and all, right? So we'll just specify static field control, and we'll specify that it should have a let's just say the fields which should be let's just specify read only. So the fields over here should be read only, which are the primary key of it. So I'll just simply specify travel ID over here. Okay, and same way over here, what we'll specify is that the field over here which is your booking ID. Okay, maybe I guess we already do have a chunk with field read only. Let's just either cut this from here, paste it over here. Okay, so we have got that. Okay, now this class is yet to be generated. So let me just activate this. Now we'll see the differences into the class. I'll just generate this particular behavior implementation class. So you see this particular class is going to get generated. I'll just go next, finish. Okay, now we'll see the main difference. I'll just open the class for my managed as well. In my source code over here, classes, is the one. Okay, I'll just, so this the one on my left is a one for unmanaged. This is the one for managed. You see this definition over here looks quite good. So on the global class level, the things are same. Now let's just say on to the handler level. I'll just expand this. You see LHC travel, booking and save sequence. Here we got the LHC and the save sequence when we started implementing something. But if I just go in the handler of a booking, what all thing it does have? It has just got the validate mandatory fields, and that's all, right? This is all it has, validate mandatory fields. And if I just go over here, let's see booking. Sorry, maybe let's just go from the root node. I'll just simply say let's see travel, and let's just also go to let's see travel over here. We see this particular class does have a get instance authorization like we do have, and then we have methods for determination and validation. Here we don't have a determination and validation, but still we have got a method for create, update, delete, read, lock, read by association, which gives me a capability saying using the travel if I would like to read the booking, using the travel if I would like to create the booking. So these are the methods that you see over here and the implementation part of it. Now, if I just go to the booking, I see the update, delete, read by association. And if I go to my final one, which is a save sequence over here, you see in my save sequence, I just had an adjust number because I went ahead with the late numbering. But here I have a finalize, check before save, clean up, finalize. It means it gave me full particular class which I will be responsible for implementing it. Okay. So the thing that just got changed is rather than giving me all the capabilities which I have defined over here, I'll just say this one. Rather than giving me all the capabilities, right? Working out of the box for each of the thing, they generated a method. For create, I see a method called create. For update, I have a method called update. For delete, I have a delete. Read is something which I will get implicitly. But when I say association booking for create, I got a method called create by association on booking. It means when someone tries to create a booking with reference to a travel, there is a method that will play a role over here. Other thing is, for example, in case of a direct booking information, I have just got the capability of update and delete, right? I cannot even manipulate my travel over here. So I have just got the read capability for my travel, right? And after these methods over here, we should also understand that they are just to set the buffer information. Afterwards, once everything has been finalized, this particular save over here is going to be responsible for saving those data into the actual table. Okay. So while implementing, we'll see how what all role they actually have to play. But this how you will see the methods which are generated and maybe what will be using it for. So I'll just activate this and let's see what is what is the situation right now. Okay, I'll just go over here. I will do a syntax check. Okay, I don't have much change over here. Now I'll just generate a behavior projection. I have a travel and new behavior. So there is going to be a projection. Okay, and I'll just give an alias over here. Okay, now let's just try to create a service for this so we can see what all things it has available. I'll just simply go over here and maybe like the service name that we do have, let's just try to create something of the same type. Okay, I'll just simply create a new service definition, set JF, UI v2, and maybe we'll call it as a underscore u. Okay, and we'll call it as a definition. I'll just simply say service definition for my travel unmanaged. Next, we'll define a service. What all thing I'll expose? I'll expose my C view over here. So there is the one. Okay, and I'll just create a service binding out of it. I'll just say new service binding. Okay, maybe I guess we are using the same convention. Okay, that's the same one. Copy service binding for my travel unmanaged. For data v2. Next. Okay, I'll activate this and publish this. And in order also for us to have, let's just say same look and feel, what we'll do is we'll generate some sort of a metadata extension by actually using the one which we already do have, right? Because we want the at least the behavior on the same line, then maybe we can utilize it. Now, when we look at the travel, definitely we won't find much thing over here. Okay, so we don't have much things available over here, but rather I'll just go back and add the same metadata extension over here. So I'll just go in my CDS node where I have metadata extension. So let's just try to copy it over. So I'll just simply say Control C, Control V. So it will give me this. I'll just simply say underscore U because we have the same data model. Okay, because we want to understand the concept, or I can say the unmanaged working mechanism of unmanaged rather than this one. And here I'll just simply say annotate entity this one. And in this one, we have to specify metadata allow extension. Activate this. Okay, and now let's just do a syntax check. Okay, seems the things are good. Okay, here we used to call it as a booking. What does it have? It has booking. Okay, fine. Do we have any other changes? No, things are pretty similar. Okay, I'll just activate this. And maybe we'll also go with this one, booking one, Control C, Control V, underscore U. I'll just rename the views which we are going to annotate. And we'll also need this particular same thing over here, metadata allow extension. Go back, and here we'll simply say annotate this one. And we have these things working. I'll just activate this. Now let's just go over here and try refreshing my application. Okay, so we have the same application available this time, but we'll see the, okay, now one thing maybe you would have observed is that your unmanaged scenario over here, right? Unmanaged scenario over here, maybe I guess, yeah. We implemented unmanaged scenario, but as I mentioned, your read and query will still work maybe to most of the extent. There are only minor things which you might have to adjust. Okay, so we'll see that even though we went ahead with a unmanaged scenario, this particular data is something that it was able to pull correctly because the source of it is not the table, right? The source for my particular data is my CDS views, which are rightly connected to my table. So I'm getting that particular data over here. Okay, then we'll see how we can perform the transactional capability. Now, as on the preview mode, I was facing some issue while previewing those information. I'll try to connect this particular service to my project itself, which I do have. Okay, let's see what we can do over here. Here I have a service binding which was connected to this one. Earlier, the one which was connected to was service binding here. Maybe this is the one that we used. Right, this was the path, and this time the path has changed a bit like this. Okay, I'll just go over here. Maybe I guess we have the dev space has stopped. Let's just try to reopen it. So we have just generated the behavior. We have not started implementing the capabilities of it. So we'll see first what is the state. I mean, how in what state my current application is. What are the things which are working? What are the things which are not? Then we'll try to fix each of the things step by step, so we understand how the dots are connected. Okay, so I'll just go over here. Okay, so we have this particular service available, and we'll see that this particular service that we have used so far, right, which is this one. You might see this somewhere. I'll just copy this, and maybe if I just go over here, I'll just search for this. You see, it's being used at multiple places. README, this particular URL path, local execution, maybe this particular mock run as well. Manifest has also got this path, and the annotation as well. Okay, so these are the places. So now there are two options. Either we go ahead and change this particular path over here manually, okay, or maybe we can just simply go ahead and create a project which will ultimately consume my new service. Okay, so let's just keep this so we can compare the similarities and differences, and then maybe we'll uh, uh, let's just say run it through. I'll just simply go over here. I'll just generate a new terminal. First, I'll just try to log into my CF because I doubt it will be already in. Okay, and now we'll try to create a new project. Okay, we would like to generate a SAP Fiori application. Last time, maybe we went ahead with a Vue Fiori application generator. So both are anyway valid ways. We can go with either of them. Let's report page. Okay, I'll just connect to my system, ABAP environment. And I'll choose the ABAP environment, the one which I do have. And here I should see the service that I generated. Maybe I guess this might time out. Okay, it's loading. Okay, setjf. We have this one, UI travel v2 underscore u. We'll just select this. Okay, let's just go next. What is the main entity for us? Travel. The one on the navigation is booking. Just go next. Give the project name. Okay, I'll just simply say my UI for unmanaged app. manage travel. Okay, I'll just let's just go with 120. We might need this too. Okay, so as last time, we'll choose to deploy this onto my Cloud Foundry environment. Okay, maybe I guess we have this destination. Let's see, we'll choose this one only from where my service can be connected. Go next. Okay, here I'll just simply say my travel unmanaged. I'll just say managed travel and manage wrap and finish. This will add a project over here. So we have this second project getting generated. Okay, so this project has generated and maybe we'll try to preview it. I'll just say go over here, right click, preview application. And there's the one which I do have. Okay, so we have also got the same thing over here. We can see that, okay, I have got a managed travel and the things are also looking fine. I might plan to open this, go over here, and maybe we'll be able to see. So my query is working, my read is also working. I can see the data. Now let's just try to change something. I'll just go and edit this time. I can see something working. Now I'll just simply say that I would like to update. So I can say vacation updated, right? And I'll just simply go ahead and save this. Okay, and I'll refresh this. You see, this particular information never got saved. It gives a it gave us a glimpse saying, okay, it worked, but it did not. Okay, because it's an unmanaged. So all those things which are planning to update anything onto my DB won't work out of the box. Rather, we have to do that. Okay, so how we can achieve that, and what are the things which are connected to that? Let's just understand that. Okay, I'll just go over here and maybe let's just try to close certain thing which we don't want now. Okay, in order for us to also understand this in a next level, also what we'll do is we'll just get the same thing which we had over here. So we are getting the information in a proper way. Okay, so the idea is currently there is a unmanaged implementation. Now we would like to update something, right? So if I just go over here in my travel, I'll just go in my sources. There is my class. Okay. What we understood is we tried updating some travel. What all method it would have went through? This one update. If I just put a cursor on this, what all thing it is giving to me? It's giving me the entity. Okay, and in the entity, what it has got the field information. It means it has got the information which my user is trying to update for sure, right? So I have this information and I might choose to ultimately pass this information onto my DB layer. Now on my wrap layer, I don't have something which can be persisted, isn't it? Right. So if I just try to put a breakpoint on this and see how the things are going on, I'll just simply go over here, click, here's the one, update, and see what is going on over here. Plus, as I mentioned, the purpose of all these methods over here is to just update the information into buffer. After buffer has been done, at one point in time, my system should be in a state that can save the data. So it means I should also get some call into my save mechanism over here. That's also one important aspect we should be looking at it, because even though I update something into buffer and if I don't persist it into my DB table, then it does not save the data. Now, what idea does it give you? So what we should understand from here is when I say update it into buffer, it means update it into some sort of a variable that can be buffered during that particular session. But when I say I'm updating something, I should not go ahead and write the insert update delete on my DB table blindly on this method. Rather, I should just persist it into some sort of a buffered table. Like if I say I have a utility BAPI sales order create, it won't save those data into the DB till the time I don't say BAPI transaction commit, because only during the commit your buffer table are going to get updated into my database table, right? So till that time the things will be updated into some sort of a buffer. That's the same thing maybe we can expect over here also to work. I'll just go over here, click on edit, and here I'll just simply say X for example, and I'll just simply try to save this. You see, I just got a debugger point over here. Okay, and here we have certain local variables which says entities. In the entities, if I just simply double click, here I have got all the data. You see, I'm getting the description vacation X over here. So this particular vacation X which I'm getting, I can utilize this information to save this information finally into my DB. Okay. At the same point in time, you see it's giving me this particular primary key. But do you see anything else which I'm getting at the same point in time? Not really, right? I'm not getting anything which ultimately gives me any other information which are not related to me. It means it's just giving me the primary key and the information which is under update. If I just go in the percentage control over here, okay, which is this one, if I just expand this, you will see it has set 0, 1 over here in description. It means it says that this is the field that has been updated. The rest of the field over here are not updated, and that's the reason I'm sending it to you. It's a patch call. Whenever a patch call ideally gets triggered, it tries to give you the individual information which are updated. The rest of the information you cannot expect to flow in. Rather, you should be getting those information and push it before even the right information gets persisted onto the database. That's the idea. Okay, so for example, if I just simply stop this execution for a while to understand the other scenario. I mean, I might choose to go ahead and directly write the code, but maybe that might not give you the clarity of how the things just started working. So that's the reason we are just going into things individually. Okay, I'll just simply, let's just say, try to go ahead and delete this record. Okay, I'll just go back. I'll just simply say this one, and I'll click on the first one, and I'll just simply say delete. I just got certain input which says this is a key parameter, and here you are getting the key parameter. So in case of a delete, what you will get? Only key. In case of update, you will get the key, you will get whole data, out of which the things that will be populated will be just your key parameter plus your other information, which is going to be your, I can say, the fields which are updated with the percentage control. Not more than that. Okay, so over here in the delete case as well, what you are supposed to do, update certain thing into the buffer saying these records are there for deletion. In the save phase, finally your activities will be performed. I'll just, even if I just execute this, it says object was deleted because my backend delete call that just got triggered returned the success message 200, and that's the reason my Fiori framework is saying object was deleted, but in reality you see this object still here. If I try clicking on create, okay, you see the moment I clicked on create, I did not get anything over here in the control, right? But if I just simply say that I'll enter some sort of a data, okay, and maybe I'll just simply add some sort of a random information, not more than that, and I'll just click on create. So maybe I did not have a debugger enabled for this one. Oh, I have deactivated the debugger. Right. Go back, click on create. I have debugger activated. Okay, and I'll just simply say XO, and maybe I'll try to save this. Switch. This time I'll simply say that this particular create information over here will have given me this particular entities over here, and I see a particular new context ID without any sort of a primary key because I never was able to enter. I just marked that field as a read only, and here I'm able to get all the information which I'm looking for, which my user entered onto the screen. Okay, in the percentage control, as you can see, here we are getting the flag for all the fields which my user entered. The field which my user did not touch, you won't see a 01 over here. So it gives you the control as well. Like in the BAPI, we used to have a data and data X, right? You remember when we used to use a BAPI and everything, we used to have an X structure to specify what all fields are being worked upon. So that's the same kind of thing over here you will expect. Okay, so I'll just close this, and we'll understand how are we supposed to make this work, because what we understood till now is that the things won't work automatically, rather we'll get a call over here. Now once we get call over here, what are we supposed to implement? How are we supposed to implement certain things? That's something we are going to understand this time. Okay, anyone has any doubt on the concept? Maybe you might see it as a bit of a theory, but the idea is um, we should be clear with that. Otherwise, I guess you may not get the topics that are going to follow. Are we all good? I hope I'm audible.
Yes, Sumit, we are good.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Okay, I'll just next over here. I still see something strange because here it never started showing the timer. Earlier teams used to show a timer of the number
Uh,
of.
it's
Okay,
showing
now
for me. What is showing
okay,
for me?
it's okay. Yeah, then it's fine because I mean last time we had an experience that maybe it did not get recorded, so that's the thing. Okay, yeah, it's showing. Then it's good. Okay, thanks. Okay, now, so when we say we are going to use some sort of a utility API, when we said we will be responsible for all those activities which are going on. Okay, what does it point? What does it point to? It points to a fact that we might need some sort of a intermediate layer over here, a API layer. Now this API layer can be a standard API class or any API classes, maybe which we may also generate. Okay, and those API classes are ideally responsible for my data persistency. This API layer or the API class will have some buffer data and will also have some capability to push buffer data into my DB. This is how an unmanaged scenario works. Okay. So what we'll do is this, for this one, we don't have any ready-made API classes available. Rather, we'll create our own API class and we'll try to use it and mimic the uh, behavior, or I can say working mechanism of an unmanaged scenario. So let's just do this. Let's just try to create some sort of an API class over here. I'll just simply say maybe ZCL, maybe JF travel API class. I'll just simply say travel API class over here. Okay, let's just go next over here. Okay, and maybe let's just finish this. So why are we doing this? So we know the fact that, okay, if we have got something using which we are supposed to, let's just say, push the data into the buffer and maybe get it back and uh, push those data from the buffer again into a DB table, how those things can be mimicked. That's something we are willing to understand. That's the reason we are just starting with the first example, starting with our first step over here to enable a basic creation of a record. Okay, that's what we are going towards right now. So what we'll do is we'll create an API class. Now, most of the API class that you would have seen are mostly singleton classes. Okay, so maybe those who may not be knowing, singleton is one of the design pattern, like we have a factory design pattern likewise. The purpose of singleton design pattern is to ensure that at a point in time for a particular object, there can only exist one class object, not more than that. That's ideally a purpose of a singleton design pattern. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just simply try to convert this into singleton. Now, how a system ensures that only one object exists? Okay, for that you have to restrict any sort of a direct object creation via constructor or a new keyword. So I'll just simply say that particular class which I do have public final, I will just simply try to convert this creation object instance creation, which is public right now. I'll try to change it to a private one. So I'll just simply say object can only be created in a private mode over here. Okay. Now, if we are saying that object can only be created in a private mode, it means object can only be created from the class and not outside of that particular class. Then we should give some utility using which someone can request for that object, right? For that, we'll ultimately generate a method, or I can say create a static method for object creation. Okay, so I'll just simply say class, maybe not data, but rather methods. And we'll call it as a, for example, get instance. It ultimately gives you the unique instance and ensures that only one instance can exist at a time. So I'll just simply say arrow instance over here, and we'll create it with reference to this particular class. So it gives me the instance of this particular class. And we might choose to create this particular class over here. Okay. Now we have to also ensure that this particular instance that we are creating is only one and it's stored somewhere. So we next time when we go ahead and try to create an object, we are also persisting it and we are returning the one which already exists. So I'll just simply say some sort of a mo instance, some sort of a static of one which already is stored. So I'll just say type refer to again this class. So what we'll do is when someone tries to invoke this get instance, we'll create a particular object, okay, and we'll assign it in my mo instance. So I'll just simply say mo instance over here should be nothing but my new and hash. So we might plan to create an object over here by passing this one. But next time if someone goes over here, they might again get a new instance, right? We don't want that. So what we'll do is we'll just simply say condition when my mo instance is bound. So if my mo instance is there, then I'll just simply return that one rather than creating a new object. Else I'll create a new one. Okay. So we'll ultimately try to create a new instance. And this particular MO instance, whichever I am getting, I am trying to return it into my RO instance. So we just are trying to mimic my API class. I just created a method which will give me a object. If it does not exist, if it exists, it will give me the same object which is already available. So we just wrote a simple plain method. Okay. Now my next thing over here is to ensure that I am trying to create a record and that creation is working. How can I do that? Now, in order for me to do that, I might choose to create certain methods. Okay. So for example, my first purpose, or I can say my purpose over here is to ensure the creation, or I can say the handler methods. Okay, now these handler methods over here, for example, I'll just say first one over here as my create travel. Now the signature of it, right, as it's an API class, the signature might be anything which might be consumed by different consumer. But let's just say, as we know, the direct consumer which we are currently creating is nothing but my API class over here. Let's just try to keep the signature which is quite aligned with that. In your real API class, you might see that the signature of it is defined by the API class generator rather than the uh, uh, rep aligned signatures. Okay, so it totally depends. In case that's the scenario, you might plan to convert it into something which is compatible with your rep going forward. Maybe a kind of a wrapper, something a wrapper creation around. Okay, but as we are creating this specifically for my rep, what I'll do is I'll just try to create a particular method, create travel, and the signature of it, what I'll give, I'll just go over here and I'll say in this create, what all things I am getting. So I'm getting some sort of importing parameter and I have some changing parameter. Okay, so I'll just try to copy this signature over here. Okay, and here maybe I'll just try to pass this on. Okay, and here maybe we are saying that in this case, entities is something it will pass for me to the input. I'll just remove this one. Derived type, I don't need that. Here also, I don't need that. And for this one, we might have to create certain types. So I'll just copy this. And maybe here I'll just simply create some sort of a type definition. Okay, so what are the types that we do have? Maybe the first one we have is for create of a travel. Let's just see the signature. It says TT create travel type table for create. So this is a kind of variable creation you will always see whenever you try to, let's just say, use wrap. This is how a variable are created. Maybe it can be type table for create, it can be type table for update, type table for read, right? Depending on your operations, these are the signature. Like we used to have type standard table of type shorted table, hash table. Likewise, you will have the signature. Let's just also create another one which is for map. Now you see one important keyword. Maybe I guess you can also, I mean, these are system generated. You may or may not would be interested in focusing on that, but it would give you a good idea if you understand that closely. Okay, what it says. Yeah, okay, it says TT mapped. I That's the name I gave, but the signature is type response. This is for the purpose of response for mapped early. Okay, like we have a keyword called early over here. Same way in somewhere in your wrap, you will also see a keyword called late. So for example, if I just go in my check before save, you will see reported late. In your save, you will say late. So it gives you the idea saying in which phase of your application's execution you are. If it says early, it means it's quite early into the stage when your buffer data are being processed. Okay, many a time in your determinations and everywhere, you will also see the keyword early. Towards the save sequence, you will start seeing the keyword called late. Late, it means when your buffer data is almost either on the completion of on the verge of completion of processing, or maybe they are already processed. Early, it means they are being processed. Okay, that's the keyword called early and late. That's something maybe I mean may not make a huge difference, but the idea is that we should be knowing what this keyword is planning to say, was willing to say. I'll just say TT failed early over here, and maybe the last one over here. I'll just go over here and just create reported. One more thing you might observe, I'll just also tell you is, because it's not in rap, it's not always about just understanding the flow, right? It's many a time also understanding the kind of transactions which are going from an ABAP perspective as well. Okay, now you would have seen or you would have observed that I specified TT create travel, but here I specified mapped earlier. I never specified travel or booking. Same way over here, it says / travel, but it never says a travel specifically a node over here. If I just click on this TT mapped early over here, you will get a travel and booking both, right? Because this particular map failed and earlier generic. They are on the BO level, business object level. It ideally contains all the nodes that you do have. Whereas your create, update, delete will be focused on individual node. And the map failed and earlier will be generic. Okay. So that's something which we should be also aware of. Okay. I'll just simply try to create this method. And what I am supposed to do in this method, your responsibility will be to ensure that whenever someone tries to create, okay, you will get a call over here in create travel. You are supposed to ensure that you might do some activity over here in order for you to push the data into the buffer. Now by buffer, what I mean is pushing the data into some sort of a variables over here, which you will ultimately consume going forward when someone tries to click on a save. Okay, so for example, I'll just give you just to give you an idea, I'll just activate this and I'll just simply say I would like to create a travel. It means in your handler on your create call over here, you are supposed to call this. I'll just simply say create a travel. By this means what I means, push the copy, push the data into buffer. Okay, and what you'll do is you will just simply say Z CLJF travel API. It's taking some time. There is something which is going on, computing additional info. Okay, no worries. I'll just simply say get instance, which will ultimately give me the object. Once I have the object, my next step should be that I would like to call some method. What is that method? Create travel. That's something maybe I'll plan passing over here. Okay. And in this particular one, which is your create travel, what you are ultimately supposed to do is you are supposed to pass the information which you are getting over here. I'll just simply click on this create one. There is something which is going on, which is not okay. Yeah, maybe I guess. Let's see. Will ultimately pass the importing parameter. So what is the signature that we defined over here? That it expect importing entities. So as it's expected into the importing, I'll just export it over here. Exporting. Maybe I'll just simply pass entities and I'll read it from the entities over here. And other parameters that we do have over here are changing. So I'll just go with a changing. Okay, maybe it started suggesting something. No, only the keywords. Nice. Mapped, and maybe failed parameter that we do have and reported. Ideally, control space should have worked, but maybe there is something going on over here. I'm not sure. It says because of some network issue, it's taking some time. Otherwise, it would have suggested that. Okay, so what we are doing is we are getting an object of a particular class and we are saying create travel. And we are passing whatever we are getting. So in debugger, we found that, okay, we are getting the information of my entities over here, right? Now, as we are getting this particular information, my idea is that this particular entity over here, okay, will have all the data that we need. Now, what we are responsible for? We are responsible for pushing this data into the buffer and persisting it, okay, and which we'll be using during the save phase. Okay. Now, what we'll do is, consider we have pushed the data, consider it's already into the buffer. Now, next time what would happen is someone try to click on save. In this particular save phase, close this. Okay, maybe I. Okay, no worries. Maybe let's just try to complete the create first. It's something which is weird. Okay. Now, when someone says I would like to create something, I'll get the data in my create travel, right? Now, at the time when I get the data in my create travel in the entities, my purpose is that my API's purpose is that I have to buffer it. Now, in order for me to buffer it, what I'll do is I'll just simply try to buffer the data in the form which is more relevant to my let's just say persistency. So for example, if I say in my entities over here, what I was getting the data which was in the form of a, in my entities, I was mainly getting the data in the form of my entity properties, which is something called travel ID, booking ID like this, right? Over here, you see. But when it comes to my table persistency, which is something I call it as a, let's just say DMO travel, for example, if I just go in my over here, in this particular case, if I put a cursor, I'll just simply should see that it's travel underscore ID and likewise this particular signature, right? So whenever you are trying to buffer some data, you should buffer the data in the form of a table which are ready-made available, and maybe we can persist it going forward in the form and we can directly push it onto the table. So what I'll do is I'll just create a buffer table over here. Okay, and here maybe I'll just simply say, for example, GT travel, and I'll just simply say type maybe standard table of a normal table like we used to do, right? A normal table creation. Now I have to pass this data into my GT travel, which is in the signature, which is having a signature like this, and my source over here is this entities. How can I achieve that? Okay, I definitely simply cannot say that my GT travel over here is corresponding entities of this one, because if I do that, my parameters over here, it won't give me any error, but as the right hand side and left hand side table signature and the property names are a bit different, the mapping won't happen and I may not get the data buffered as well. Okay, so rather what I'll say, I will say that whenever we are trying to buffer any sort of such data, we have to convert this. And in order for us to ensure this conversion, you remember in case of a manage, we used to have some sort of a mapping like like this. I used to specify mapping for this particular table over here used to have a mapping saying if it is a travel ID, then it is linked to this or vice versa, right? So this is the same kind of mapping we'll need over there as well. So I'll just simply say this one mapping from, and you will ultimately pass it here. So for example, I'll just simply say mapping for maybe you can specify DMO travel M and corresponding. So in the unmanaged as well, the same things are true. And here you will get the same sort of information, right? For example, if I say agency ID A, and here you will get the table field. Okay, so you have to ultimately map this full thing over here. So I'll just add this mapping. Now I have this mapping available. Now on your ABAP layer, what you do have is you can simply say that what is a source over here. Source over here is an entity, and what is a target? Target is a table, right? So in your corresponding, you can simply pass a keyword which is being used, that from your entity you would like to pass the data to your table. So for that we have a keyword called mapping from entity. There is another keyword mapping to entity. When on your left hand side the variable that you do have is of the type entity, and on the right hand side you have the data which is on table type. Okay, or I can say the one which you have defined over here, then you can call it as a mapping to entity. There is a difference between mapping from and to. Currently we have used from, maybe going forward we'll also might encounter a situation where we might have to map the data to entity. So we just map the data over here, we are getting this, and maybe we are having this particular GT travel also persisted over here. Now what we are supposed to do we have anything in your map parameter? Let's just see what map expect. In my travel, what does it expect? It accept a percentage CID and maybe a travel ID. These are the only two things it accepts. It expects that, okay, these are the two things which you should be passing. Okay, and maybe that particular information I can also expect my user anyway to pass from the input. Okay, we are just passing this information into buffer. Now this buffer is also supposed to be saved. So what I'll do is I'll just go over here in my save and I'll put a cursor. So now as you can see, save just has something called reported, nothing more. Okay, it means save can only generate this messages in case there is some sort of a message is generated during my save phase. So I'll just simply copy this signature and I'll just try to create a same sort of a method over here in my management. I'll call it as a saver methods, because it's not only one method we are implementing, there can be a number of methods which we might end up implementing. Now this time you see the signature over here is having a type reported late, right? So I'll just copy this, and these are reported. So like we have a type reported early, I'll just simply say TT reported late. Copy this, paste it over here, format. Okay, I'll just simply add an implementation for this. Our purpose over here is that if I have got some data in my travel, okay, then I have to ensure that this particular data is going to get persisted in my table. As simple as that. In layman term, I can simply say, as I have the same buffer which I can use across the class, I can simply say if my GT travel is not initial, in this particular case, simply go over here and just simply say modify my DMO travel M, okay, my from my table which I am passing GT travel. Now what does it do is, in your creation time, it pushes the data into the buffer. It does not really save it somewhere, but when your save is going to get executed, it's going to save this information somewhere onto the table. Okay, so I'll just simply activate this first. This a very partial, a simplest implementation. We are going to enrich it quite a bit, but just to understand that what might be going into background when someone says that my handlers are going to get executed and my saver methods are going to get executed. So this is something you can expect or visualize, that this is what your handler will do and this is what your saver will do. Okay, now it may be deep down onto the layer. Maybe here you may not have a create travel, rather you will have a BAPI cell sort of create, which might push the data into the buffer. which might have some complex logic. If this, then push the data like this, and at end of some layer, deep down in deep layer, you might have the data being persisted somewhere. The moment you say commit, those persisted data might also be pushed onto the DB in reality. But I can say to clear the picture in the simplest way, this is what it is doing. Okay. I'll just see how we can have this working as well. So for that, what we'll do is we'll just simply say ZCL, what was the name of it? ZCL JF travel get instance. Okay, we'll just simply add this. And here we have a save method of it. Okay, and it expect a reported parameter. Okay, so I'll just simply activate this as well. At the same point in time, what we have also seen is my particular travel over here does not have any way with which I can pass my travel ID, because I don't have a way I can pass it into the input, because the field has been marked as a read only. Okay, so we can utilize the learning that we have got to see how the concept that we have learned in managed are also working in unmanaged. Right. So for example, the thing that we were working, or I can say trying out, was early numbering, right, at one point in time. So I'll just simply say early numbering, for example. Okay, now the moment you say early numbering, you see there are certain things which are coming up. Early numbering required, unmanaged. Okay, yeah, these also are one very important thing. Early numbering requires an implementation type unmanaged with draft, or the implementation type manage. So it means that in case you are going ahead with unmanaged implementation, you can only use a numbering concept if you are having a draft capability. Okay, if you can only use early numbering if you are having a draft capability, without that you cannot. So we'll implement the draft as well. Okay, so we'll just comment this out for a while, and maybe let's just try to understand this one, how this is going to behave. I'll just say read only update. So my expectation is that it might allow me passing this data into the input. Let's see how it works out. Okay, so now I have done read only update. I'll try to put a breakpoint on the places which are going to be playing a bit of a role into my execution. I'll just go over here and I'll put a breakpoint here as well, and on my save over here. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll just go back in my application somewhere over here. Okay, I think it's already working. I'll just simply cancel this and I'll try to create this. Okay, no, maybe I guess it's not reloaded. I'll just refresh this. Okay, click on go. Okay, and what's the max number? 4136. Click on create. Okay, I have got a place where I can enter the number, but let's see how it's working. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, today, tomorrow. Maybe let's just say we won't pass few things. We'll just simply say description and maybe open over here. And let's try to create this. Let's see how it works over here. Oh, my bad. We directly saved that. Let's see, did it work? I can see a record. Maybe we are not able to go in debug because I had clicked on skip all the debugger, but at least that worked. I'll just enable all the breakpoint to see the things into picture. Action, create, 4138, 234, 56, D2 and O. And do we have breakpoints enabled? Yeah, now we do have. And click on create. Switch. What have we got? In the travel over here, we have got all the things, including the number, right? Now, as we have got this particular thing, I'll just simply try to press F6. Okay, and here we are into the travel, and my GT travel this time will have got this information into the buffer. So I see this information just got placed from the table, which was in the form of entity, to a table which is in the form of a now DB table. I have got this information. I'll now execute. I'm getting my call into a save sequence next time. Okay, and in this particular save, you see that I have got this particular set of information, and this GT travel is something which I'm trying to push on my DB, and now this will get pushed. I'll execute, and this particular thing just got created. For each of the step, you are supposed to write the code, but the idea is that don't visualize as if you are supposed to write individual ABAP code like we did over here, because or I can say you can expect that the code which you are doing over here on the API layer already exists. Because if the API layer exists, then it really makes sense for you to go in your behavior class over here and call those particular points from the call those methods from the individual plugs over here. Okay, so this is how we are able to create any doubts, any questions into this for now, because now we are going to enrich it in a quite a bit way, because currently we just use entities. We never use map, failed, reported. What is the purpose of this mapping? We never use that. So we have to use that in order for us to understand that why it is there and what would happen if it is not there, and in which case we are supposed to use that. Okay. Anyone has any doubts till now? No? Quite clear or confused? Okay. Yeah, Karan, I hope all clear, right? You were saying something. Any doubts?
Yeah, all good. We'll just spend some time on it so that we can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you might have to. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Now, next thing is maybe let's just try to get the flavor of a draft as well, right? The one which we were seeing over here. Post which certain thing which were working definitely, as we have seen it in the past as well in case of manage, might need some sort of a bit of an adjustment. Otherwise, they might not also work. Okay. So we are supposed to enable the draft. So as I mentioned in the draft, many things you might also see just starts working automatically, and many things may not work. So what are those? Let's just understand. If I have to enable a draft, what I'm supposed to do at the very first, I have to add a with draft keyword over here. With draft. Now, the moment you add with draft, you will get the same error. Like that's something we used to get, that there are no draft persistency specified. So I have to specify draft table. It means in manage, we used to have persistent table and draft table, but in draft mechanism, at least you will have the draft table. That's something which you will have. So how can I do that? You will have to add a draft table over here. Draft table Z JF draft table for unmanaged of travel is given, and I'll just try to create this Control+1. Okay, a draft table just got created. I'll activate this. Okay, oh, maybe over here, do a syntax check again. Okay, it says if it's a lock master, you have to add a total e tag like we did in the earlier one. I'll just simply say total e tag, and maybe as I mentioned, we'll add it onto the last change it. Okay, and now we have to add certain lifecycle methods. This lifecycle method that we are talking about are nothing but the one which we already have consumed earlier. Draft action, maybe we'll just go with, for example, edit. We have got the draft action, maybe activate. Draft action, maybe a discard, and maybe resume as well. And the prepare action is also something we have added. Draft, determine action, prepare. Okay, and maybe here also we were forced to add an optimize keyword for an optimized execution. Okay, this does not have any error. Now this does have, because here also we have to specify some draft table set jf du booking. Okay, activate this, cancel, do a syntax check. Here we don't have any error. Now it says that this travel should also have a draft capability to update the parent. So I'll just simply say with draft. And here also we have to specify with draft. Okay, do we see anything remaining? Not really, right? I'll just go over here and activate this. Okay, now we have to use the draft capability as well. So I'll just go in my projection layer and I'll just add a use draft. Okay, and what are the expectation? The moment we use draft, we have to also expose its particular action, use action edit, use action activate, use action maybe resume, and maybe we are also left with two more, discard, use action prepare. Okay, and same way over here we are supposed to specify with draft, and here as well with draft. Okay, so we have now exposed the draft capability. Now we'll see what are the things which just started, which was working earlier, and now what are the changes in that. Okay, so I'll just simply go over here and maybe I'll try to close this particular behavior things. We don't need that. We don't also need this one, or this one, or this one as well. We don't need all of them. Okay, now let's just go over here and try to see the application in action again. Okay, now first thing that was working, right, was my create, because we implemented it, right? So now what would be the situation? Or let's just say another thing which was not working but partially working. Partially as in, if I say I have this particular vacation, I was able to read the data, query, I was able to query the data on my list. I was able to read the data on my individual one. I was able to switch to an edit mode. Let me click on edit. You see, it says no data found. Earlier, you used to switch to an edit mode, but now you are not able to switch to an edit mode over here. Correct? Now, why that could be the case? Because in non-draft application, what happens is, in a non-draft application, ideally you have a, let's just say, a record which you are switching directly to edit, but the moment you switch into edit, no record gets created. But if it's a draft based application, if you are switching something into your edit mode, we are expecting an entry to be created in my draft table, isn't it? As we are expecting an entry to be created in my draft table, if I just preview this, somehow my system was not able to create a draft entry, and that's the reason when it tries querying that data, it says that, okay, no data found. So it's not saying that your record did not found on the persistent table. Rather, the moment you're going in edit mode over here in the false, it's trying to look for the same data on your draft table, which somehow system was not able to create. And that's the reason it says no data found. So this is something we have to overcome. How we can do that? In order for us to do that, we have to understand what is a mechanism it ideally goes through. Okay, so first thing we have to understand is we'll go over here and we'll put a breakpoint on my method called read here. Okay, and here I'll just go back again and I'll try to click on edit. I did not trigger any breakpoint. It's waiting, but it's okay. Let's see. It is waiting for. Somehow it's failing to connect over there. Okay, no worries. We'll make that work. A minute. Okay. In reality, what happens is maybe I guess somehow I'm not able to get this breakpoints. I'll just run and remove all the breakpoints that I do have till now. Okay, and reopen this class again. This one. Okay, let's try it for the for one more time. Maybe it's not hitting it somehow. Okay, let's just understand this read. Maybe this read is the one which is ideally responsible for your reading the data, in your edit mode. Somehow I don't see this method getting hit. Maybe during the edit call it's somehow failing, but let's see. Maybe we'll go with the solutions, see if that works out. So when I say I'm trying to read the data, whenever you are in your active data mode, right, which is like this one, my system is not supposed to go ahead and check the data, check for the data anywhere, because it has a CDS views connected to that from where it can get the data. But the moment you try to go in edit mode, my system ideally look for the data, and that particular data that it tries to look for is into the draft table. Now, how my system will know that, okay, what are the data that I might need? So if you just go in this particular read scenario over here, it has got some key parameters saying what are the data I'm trying to read. It says you are trying to read the data in the draft mode in the travel ID over here, and then you might get some information saying what all data I'm looking for. In the result, system expect that this particular set of data should be returned. For example, if I'm saying I'm trying to read a travel number 1, my expectation is that somehow my travel number 1 should be read and I should be able to send those data into result. So you might visualize it as some sort of a select query. You are trying to get the data via selecting a data from my travel table, and then you are responding back with that. And the response that you might send, you have to send it into the result parameter, right? So this particular thing that we are doing over here, read, is ideally required in order for you to work with the draft set of data. So that's the thing. Your certain thing which will work, which I mentioned. So if I just go over here, go back, and if I say create, and I go back over here, and I'll try to refresh my table, this one. My draft record creation worked without me writing any single line of code for my create scenario on my draft. Okay. But when it comes to read, that particular scenario is something which might need some sort of an enrichment. That's the thing. If I'm saying certain thing will work automatically, if I just simply go over here and I'll say that, okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. And if I just go over here and I'll just try refreshing, I can expect that this information is going to get updated on my draft table. So your draft creation is working, your draft merge is working, your draft data is getting updated. But your read draft will need some sort of an enrichment which will help you read the draft data correctly. That's the idea. Okay. So I'll just go over here and I'll maybe try to discard this as well. So your draft delete will also work. And I can see that your draft record also got deleted. And for this draft mechanism to work, we never wrote any code line, right, in our system. Now, let's just keep it to the minimum, and to keep it to the minimum, what I'll need is that this particular key and the result. As you can see in this key, I have a travel ID, and in this one as well, in the result as well, I have got the same travel ID, this combination. So if I pass the result combination, at least with the key parameter, will my system be able to read the information? Let's just see that. I'll just simply say result over here, which I'll pass from my key parameter by passing the corresponding. So in my read, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pass the key information back into the result. Just activate this. Okay, let's just try refreshing this. Okay, I'll go in edit. You see now it just started working. I'm able to go in edit mode. I mean, that particular method definitely has a role to play, but somehow it was not getting executed. That's something which was a bit weird. But what happens is the moment you say, okay, I'll just put a breakpoint now. If that works, I'll just discard this, put a breakpoint, go in edit. Now I just got the breakpoint. That's something weird. Maybe the placement was not something which system was able to identify, it seems. Okay. So the moment I say I am trying to read the data, I am expecting some data in my result. So if I don't pass the result, then definitely my system is going to uh, understand that I don't have that particular record available and it won't create that record in my draft. So for example, if you just simply say jump to line like we used to say shift F12, my result will be empty. And if I just execute this now, you will get no data found. But if you return it with the bare minimum parameter, which is nothing but your key parameter over here. So if I just simply say F6, in my result, I'm not populating everything. I'm just populating the key parameter of it. Then my system will try to get the rest of the data from my CDS view. I'll execute this and they are populated over here. At the same point in time, let me just go over here and try to go in wrapper mode and here going, I'll just refresh this. And you see this particular record just got updated on my draft table. So in your edit as well, these things just started working. So this is how you can start enriching your unmanaged draft so that your creation of a draft just started working. Your updation of a draft also works, but persisting them into the database, that will be a developer's responsibility. We started with the create and we'll go with the other forms as well, how that can be achieved. Anyone has any doubts till now? No? Okay. Then maybe I guess it's 10:34. We'll call it a day. We'll gather back tomorrow and we'll try to complete the update, delete, and all those scenarios to see how those particular frameworks and everything is connected. And then we'll go with the next thing, which are nothing but the enriching this with the custom REST API capabilities. Determination and validation we have learned. We have not learned actions. So how the actions and function imports works in RAP. That's something we'll also see, and maybe few more things which we'll be learning is I can say manage with unmanaged save, manage with additional save. Okay, so we'll be learning it during the upcoming courses, upcoming sessions. Okay, I hope we all are good.
Thank you, Sumit.
Yes,
Yeah,
Sumit.
thanks. Okay, yeah. Thanks everyone for joining. Then we'll see you again at the same time tomorrow. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.